All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for joining us today for Resilinc's webinar covering supply chain predictive analytics and a look at our predictive PO on-time delivery solution. My name is Melissa Geringer. I oversee corporate communications for Resilinc, and I'll be serving as moderator for today's presentation. We'll be doing a Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please use the question tab to send in your questions, and we'll do our best to cover them today, or we'll follow up with you after. We'll also be recording the webinar and making it available to you after the broadcast. So with that, let's talk about the agenda. We're first going to talk through the role predictive analytics is currently playing in supply chain risk management and why technology is going to be essential for a resilient supply chain moving forward. Following that, we'll be walking you through our newest product offering, our predictive PO on-time delivery solution. That includes how it works and the ROI you can expect. And again, we'll wrap up with a Q&A, so you should see the question tab there to send in your questions. And with that, I'd like to introduce our two speakers today, Sumit Vakil and Sandeep Ramachandran. Sumit is Chief Product Officer and co-founder of Resilinc and responsible for our product and technology vision and delivery. Sumit has 25 years of experience bringing innovative technologies to market and has served in leadership roles in product management and engineering at successful startups, as well as Fortune 500 companies such as Brocade and Cisco. And joining him as Resilinc's Director of Product, Sandeep Ramachandran. Sandeep has handled multiple roles within the supply chain risk domain, such as advisory, product marketing, and product development. Currently, he heads up Resilinc's product management in the US region. A warm welcome to you both, and thanks again to our audience dialing in today. And Sumit, I'll hand the controls over to you.
Thank you, Melissa. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining our webinar today. Let me start off by presenting some trends around supply chain resiliency that were recently published by Gartner. So these came out just in December of 2020, so they're pretty fresh. As you can see, what Gartner found was almost 90% of companies today are investing in supply chain resiliency and agility solutions. Obviously, COVID-19 has really brought home the need for making supply chains resilient to disruptions. And so companies are starting to invest heavily in it. But with that investment comes a question: how do we actually gauge that our supply chains are resilient? Here again, what Gartner's research has found is what's interesting to look at. What I have on the slide on the right-hand side are 3 of the top 5 parameters that Gartner has found that are valuable to look at, that are essential to look at, I would say, in order to gauge the resiliency of your supply chain. One is your order fulfillment cycle time mostly protected from supply chain disruptions? Related to that, is your perfect order fulfillment metric also protected by, mostly protected from supply chain disruptions? And the third one, how well and how deeply have you mapped out your multi-tier supply chain? Next slide, please. Here's another thing that Gartner found, that in order to achieve it, and this is from the same report, for digital transformation and for hyper automation, the key technologies to look at and to invest in are going to be in machine learning and big data. They found that a majority of the companies have already started this investment. And the idea here is for us to be able to get to a point where supply chains can start functioning in a way where much of it is automated. And when we talk automation, we are talking not just a shop floor automation through robots and such, but also the portion of the supply chain that runs in offices on our computers. So let's talk a little bit more about hyper automation on the next slide. So what really is hyper automation? Let's start there. Again, when we talk hyper automation, generally what first comes to mind is the shop floor and robots working on their own, doing the manufacturing operations semi-autonomously and so on. What I'm actually talking about is a little different here, right? Hyper automation, as I was mentioning, actually extends into the office environment as well, where the other parts of supply chain operate from. So what we're talking about here is a way to use AI and machine learning technologies to augment human decision making, meaning use these AI technologies to offload the mundane, the routine, the things that people do day in, day out, the same activities that are performed over and over. We're talking about taking those and having new technologies around AI automate them. So let's, and then that frees up the people to actually do value-added work. So let me provide some examples here, right? Collecting data from suppliers to create this 360-degree view to get these detailed insights about suppliers. There is no reason that spreadsheets and emails should be used in this day and age. There are tools, including ours, which help you automatically collect that information. But collecting information is just not sufficient. Once the data is automatically collected, these systems need to be able to automatically analyze the data, generate the right analytics, generate the right KPIs. Even that by itself is not essential. It has to go to the next level where once those KPIs are generated, the solution should be able to help you prioritize work. Okay, in case of a supply chain disruption, the solution should be able to tell you exactly what your impact is going to be or likely to be. What parts, what suppliers, what products, even which of your customers could be impacted. It should also be able to tell you which suppliers are most likely to delay your purchase orders and hence impact your order fulfillment metrics. This actually is a very, very key topic, going back to the findings that Gartner had around how 2 of the top 5 metrics had to, for resilient supply chains, had to do with order fulfillment. And we will talk much more about this metric and how to get to purchase order delays ahead of time later on in this webinar. And then lastly, but certainly not least, the AI-based solution should be able to prescribe next steps. So for example, if you have a high-risk supplier, let's say they're high risk partly because they are single sourced, and the solution should be able to prescribe to you what the next step should be. So taken together, this is what we are talking about with regards to when we say hyperautomation. Solutions that take over the mundane when it comes to data collection, analytics generation, KPI generation, helping you prioritize, making prescriptive recommendations, and thereby augmenting the work humans do and freeing people up to focus more on the value add. Okay. Now let's talk about how Resilinc has been delivering on the hyperautomation promise. If we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the Resilinc solution has provided 2 broad workflows. So one is reactive, which comes into play when a supply chain disruption occurs, and the other is proactive, which is where you work ahead of time on an ongoing basis to identify and mitigate risks in your supply chain. So let's start with the reactive event-based workflow to understand how hyperautomation comes into play here. So what the solution does today is it automatically detects supply chain disruptions worldwide, and it does that by applying the latest in natural language processing and AI technologies to process news worldwide in over 100 different languages. Once the software solution identifies that this incident is going to disrupt the supply chain, it automatically generates a detailed analysis of what the impact could be to your supply chain. And it does this down to the part number level and can do it all the way up to your customer level or any other grouping of products that you're interested in. So there is no, monitoring by humans of what's going on in the world. There is no, this panic analysis and number crunching when something happens. All of this is automated. A virtual war room is also automatically created and presented to the teams responsible for mitigating the event. We had talked about automatically collecting information from suppliers. So that's the next thing the solution does. It reaches out to suppliers automatically and requests them to update, provide an update on what the impact is to them, how long will they take to recover. And all of this gets wrapped together in our workflow solution where companies can deploy playbooks. For example, a company could have a playbook that that prescribes how to deal with a supplier in a flood zone. Okay, so when an event happens, then these playbooks can be deployed quickly, and then people can start, acting on very specific items that come out of the playbooks. Associated with this is the collaboration center, which makes it really easy to communicate with internal teams and with suppliers to collaborate with these teams to come to a resolution. On the proactive side, also hyperautomation has been in play at Resilinc for quite some time now. And the way it works is it starts with the automation of data collection. So the system is able to collect a multi-tier supply chain mapping, part-to-site mapping from your suppliers, their suppliers, suppliers, and so on. In addition to that, it is able to collect pretty much any kind of information you can think of from a supplier, including business continuity practices related information. Another example could be quality information. Yet another example could be corporate citizenship and so on. More recently, the system's been able to collect inventory and lead time information directly from the suppliers as well. Once all this data is collected, then the system automatically generates analytics around it. Okay, it automatically identifies risk exposures, single points of failures, and then it also does the prioritization and guides the users towards which suppliers, which parts are needing the most immediate attention, where to start, and then what comes along are the playbooks again. So a company may have a process around how to manage and mitigate, let's say, a supplier who does not have an alternate manufacturing location available. So if the proactive workflow identifies a supplier that meets that criteria, then that playbook can be executed. People can start taking action. And again, the collaboration center comes in here to make it very easy for people to come together, both internally and with the suppliers, in order to proactively resolve these kind of risks. So that's how Resilinc has been doing, delivering on the hyper-automation promise for a number of years now. We tend to use quite a bit of natural language processing and other AI technologies in delivering on this. Now going forward, if we go to the next slide, we can I can talk about what the future-looking vision for us is. So it all starts with the intelligence, right? This is the data collection part. As I had mentioned, we're able to collect multi-tier supply chain mapping, part-to-site mapping, what parts are made, warehoused, transported, where, etc. Combine that with purchase order information, lead time, inventory positions, and now what you have is this very deep reservoir, very detailed information about supplier behavior. Okay. Combine that with the latest in AI technology. So we talked about how we use natural language processing to monitor worldwide news. We also use predictive modeling technologies with the latest in machine learning. And of course, we have deployed deep neural networks in several different places as well. When you bring all this together, you come up with a command and control tower solution, which gives you a completely new way of managing supplier performance. So all the mundane stuff has been automated, all the routine tasks, all the KPI generation is automated, and the AI is basically now making predictions on what the supplier's behavior is likely to be given various different scenarios. And then it's making a recommendation on what you can do in order to mitigate. Let's see this in action. I'll talk about a case study from one of our customers. So this is a major success story for one of our customers during the COVID pandemic. So let me start at the end here. What did they accomplish? $53 million in savings in just 2 quarters. This is the delivery. This is the payoff from that you can expect to get from digitalizing your supply chains and through hyper automation. So let's see what they did. What they were able to do with AI technologies, including ours, is first they were able to predict how the lockdowns are going to proceed. And by this early prediction of what manufacturing zones are most likely to go under lockdown, first, they were able to focus. They didn't have to look at the whole globe all at once. They were able to focus. Second, what they were able to do was use our prediction, our purchase order delay predictions. So now that they have the region focus zoomed in on, they were able to say in this region, these suppliers and these specific purchase orders are most likely to get delayed. With that information, that insight available to them automatically, they were actually able to really concentrate their resources on figuring out how to manage inventory. They were able to reroute inventory. In some cases, they were able to find alternate manufacturing sites and move inventory from one site to another site. They were able to take a number of different actions that way. Ultimately, the result was the savings that we talked about, 53 million in 2 quarters. So today, what we want to do now is zoom in on that purchase order delay prediction solution. And for that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Sandeep.
Thanks, Sumit. Hello, everybody. Super excited to be here today to talk about the new product. And I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the on-time delivery and some of its effects on today's supply chain. So we have a lean and agile world today that on-time delivery metric is a very key performance indicator. And with various disruptions that's happening every second, as Sumit earlier mentioned in a few slides back, the top success factors that people look for in a resilient supply chain is number one, how effective is your order fulfillment cycle? And number two, how often are your suppliers able to fulfill on time each and every item in your purchase orders that you've placed? And what we saw was whenever disruptions happened, which impact your purchase orders out there, two things happen. One is either the information is too delayed, you're not having that information on your hand, or number two, it's very significantly late that you're in a firefighting mode. And due to this, we have seen that there's a significant impact to business operations and its efficiency. And of course, this adds to the overall cost of the company. And some of the main drivers that we have observed as a result of this is, one, whenever these purchase orders get delayed, supply chain teams, not only just the supply chain teams, in fact, extended teams within the organization will have to be pulled into this activity of analyzing what's the impact, which are the POs getting affected, how many units within each PO is getting affected, and ultimately it might end up being that you might reorder or reinitiate a completely new PO so that it's not too backlogged at that point. So this adds to the overall overhead expenditure. The other one is, to ensure your production and delivery schedules to make sure that it's intact, you might have to expedite the shipping, and expediting, as we know, you might have to end up paying hefty amounts, and that too for an unanticipated issue right here. Another one could be, if it's a massive event with long duration of impacts, it could actually lead to material shortages and you might be put in allocation. And there's a lot of such cases right now as we speak, affecting our material shortages, affecting the supply chain. And at that time, you wish you had this early intelligence, and if you could have taken, those actions earlier on, having that first mover advantage, it would have been much helpful at that time. And all this adds up to the overall opportunity cost, because you might end up having some lost sales and customer satisfaction. And that is where the Resilinc's predictive PO on-time delivery solution lets you know which supplier purchase orders could be delayed and what are some of the factors that are causing these delays. So you could immediately take actions to ensure proper business operations. So next, let's look at how this works. Now, for the prediction system that we have built, there are some key inputs that are fed into building that overall prediction and letting you know what's the impact to your on-time delivery metric, or what's the delay to the purchase orders that you've placed. From the customer side, there are two main inputs. One, it takes the current as well as years of historical purchase order information, and this includes things like which supplier, what are the purchase orders that have been fulfilled in the past, what's there in the future, what are some of the promised delivery dates which the supplier had promised, what was the actual delivery date, and what are some of the unanticipated delays that have happened throughout this whole cycle. The next input is the supplier KPIs itself. For example, any kind of these operational metrics, you would bring all that as well from the customer side. Now, from the Resilinc side, there are three key inputs that we are talking about. Number one, it's the real-time event monitoring intelligence, which is powered by Resilinc Event Watch. And to talk a little bit about it, as Sumit mentioned, it's the 24/7 monitoring engine, 40 different event types, millions of news articles that are being sensed, 100 different languages that are read through, and ultimately you're able to quickly sense what kind of events are out there that could affect the supply chains. The second one here from the Resilinc side is the intelligence from the supply chain mapping, as well as the visibility, as we call, where you take a product, you understand what are the materials, parts manufactured at various supplier facilities, what are the site capabilities of your suppliers? Is it robust and capable when they're affected by different events? What are the sub-tier suppliers, sites and parts that go into ultimately your product, and so on? So that full end-to-end visibility is the second input that goes from the Resilinc system. The third one is the 10 years of disruption history from the Resilinc system. So we have been monitoring different kinds of events from across the world, different geolocations, all the way to the granular level. So quickly understanding or having that information of what are the suppliers that have been affected in the past, which are the regions, what are the sites of the suppliers, have they confirmed impacts, and so on. So all this feeds into the system, and ultimately providing that prediction of what are some of your POs that could be affected, and out of these affected POs, what could be the delay that you're expecting? For example, let's say PO A, it could be delayed by, let's say, 1 to 2 weeks. PO B has a significant impact. It could be anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks. So having that information on your hand and being able to immediately act upon, that's what Resilinc Supplier Predictive PO provides you. Now, there are two different paths of predictions here. The first one is during a normal course of operation, the purchase orders are raised by the internal teams, the details come into the system, and with all the different inputs that I just previously explained, the prediction happens where the outcome is that it would say, let's say, X number of supplier POs could be delayed, and out of those delayed POs, what is the expected delay time as well? As I was mentioning earlier on, how many weeks of delay are we expecting here? Now, the second path is something which is induced by an event, which is, let's say there's some kind of an event that's happening around the world, and you've already mapped your supply chain, you have your new and existing POs information flowing in as well, and the system provides two main predictions here. Number one, how long will this event impact your outstanding POs and suppliers? And number two, for each and every PO that's out there for the suppliers affected, how many weeks of delay are you expecting? Now, just imagine how valuable this information could be when you're told, whenever there's a disruption sensed, you're exactly pointed to, these are the POs that are going to be delayed, by how much time are you expecting, so that your teams can prioritize and initiate any kind of tasks, so the overall disruption is minimized at the end of the day. Now, let's look at how all this works, or how this is visualized in the product itself. So, okay, there you go. So what you're seeing right now is virtual war room in the Resilinc system, and in this case, it's the virtual war room for a global technology company, GTC Technologies, and it's their war room. In this case, there's a typhoon that's expected, and this is an example, by the way, this is an example of an event-induced case that we're going to talk about. So in this war room, what you're able to immediately see is what are the suppliers that are impacted. In this case, it's a typhoon that's getting affected in the Eastern China, South Korea region. So what are the suppliers and sites in the region of the typhoon? What are the parts and products that could be potentially affected? Then there's the automated supplier impact confirmation, where the suppliers can immediately let you know if they're impacted, not impacted. If they're impacted, how much is the downtime that they're expecting, and so on. And in this example, what we see is looks like there are 47 suppliers and around 436 processing or manufacturing sites in the path of the hurricane or the typhoon that we're referring here. Now, based on the event type, which is the typhoon, along with the past events that has affected this region, all the historical and future POs that are open out there, the impacts to the suppliers that we have seen in the past as well, immediately what you see is a prediction summary way up at the top in the box that you see. And there are two things that it's showing right now. Number one, based on the POs that are open from the suppliers affected by this event, how likely are the POs going to be delayed? So here you can see that the POs are delayed between 2 to 3 months. And the second one is for an event type like this, what's the system predicting? Looks like there's a 2-month impact to the suppliers in general. So again, this is taking into consideration all that historical information and giving you that future-looking prediction as to what could be a potential, as a summary, what could be the potential impact that you're looking at here. As you go into the details, as you go into the details, you start to see the list of your suppliers, the materials, the site activities, products in general. And the first table that you see at the top is a list of all your suppliers, what the supplier has informed you so far, have they confirmed the impact? If they haven't, what's the impact duration so far that we have identified? And the blue box itself is the probable weeks of delay, which is the prediction for each supplier. What is the prediction, or what is the prediction of the delay expected in the purchase orders that you have raised for that supplier based on the event that you're talking about? And what you would be able to infer out of this table is what you see on the left, that's 70% of my suppliers are impacted in this case and have less than 2 weeks of delay. 20% of suppliers, we don't expect any delays based on how they've been managing their PO executions. 10% of suppliers are expected to be impacted, but with a significant delay of 7 weeks. Again, what it provides you is a quick indication of where are some of the important areas to focus on, which are the suppliers that you need to focus on, and then take quick actions to mitigate any kind of risks out there. Now, the table just below it is actually a breakdown of the materials, and from looking at it from a category level, you can actually take this analysis to the next level. For example, how many of the parts that are affected through this event are single sourced? How many of the parts are actually have an alternate site of production in case the primary site goes down? Do you have an alternate site that you could switch over? Or if not, what kind of an impact are you looking at? So in general, you're able to quickly get into a quick view of what the impact is and do deeper analysis right from here. Now, obviously, the next step would be, oh, these are the suppliers that are impacted. How do I get to the details of my purchase orders? So as you click on any of these weeks of delay, the 1 to 2 weeks or 7 to 10 weeks of delay that's predicted, you can get into the specifics of each and every purchase order for the suppliers. And what you're seeing in the screen is the list of all my suppliers, what's the purchase order, which categories do they tie back into, what's the impact status, whether the supplier has so far confirmed impact, they're still waiting out there for confirmation. So this is through the automated process we talked about. What's the approval date? When was the PO initiated? What was initially the promised arrival date? And then everything after that would be the prediction based on what the model in the data is available. So what makes the prediction even more exciting is a lot of this information is actually continuous learning. For example, let's say your a supply chain team member talks to the supplier. They get to know that for a certain supplier, the expected impact is much significant compared to what was initially thought for. So what the user or what the supply chain team member could do here is quickly come here, update the information right here. So some of the last few columns that you see here as actually it's actually a user form. So the supply chain team member could provide additional details of what's the expected delay now, what are some of the additional reasonings, what the delay is all about, and this feedback is fed into the model or the product itself. So it's a continuous learning that's happening. So the next time another event happens, all the learnings right from the system, the arrival date, the actual arrival date of the POs, plus anything that the supply chain team members feed into the system is taken into account for the future predictions that's available out there. So it's a constantly learning cycle that you're looking at. Now, all of this is activated, or it is actually integrated with the Resilinc workflows or the mitigation system, because now you know what the impact is, you know what kind of areas you need to focus on, and then you might want to initiate a purchase order playbook, for example. So let's say companies that day in and day out, there's some kind of impacts that you witness, you've come across, you've put together a purchase order playbook with several different steps, and from there or from the screen, right away you are able to initiate your playbook, assign the actions to the different team members, set the due date, priority, and track all the actions taken by the team members. It's also integrated to the collaboration center that we have, where you can seamlessly integrate or talk with your internal teams, external teams, the suppliers, and so on. So as a whole, now you're able to bring in much more transparency, much more visibility into your processes and what actions that you're taking. Now, if you look at the whole system here, right from immediately getting a sense of what are the events out there that's affecting your supply chain, to understanding through the war room, what are my suppliers, sites, parts, and sub-tiers getting affected, to getting the suppliers to collaborate with your different events, to getting that prediction out, which is out of the suppliers impacted, these are the purchase orders that are open for them, and this is what the predicted impact is. You could immediately take actions to close any kind of gap. So it's a well-rounded system where you can immediately take measures to ultimately improve your business operations. Now, from the ROI perspective, it's significant and immediate value that you get, because the prediction itself is actually tailored for each and every customer based on their data, because for each customer, there's a different purchase orders that you have faced. There are different reasonings and different delays that have happened in the past. There's different learnings that have been imparted back into your system through the teams. So it's very unique in that way. So what would happen is the prediction output is completely tailored, or the system is completely tailored at a user or a company level. And then your suppliers and POs, all that run through this machine learning algorithm, where there's a continuous improvement process. So any new feedback that comes into the system, when new actual delivery dates of your purchase orders come in, the system on its own, as I was mentioning, learns and improves the accuracy. And as the accuracy increases, as you can imagine, you're getting the timely information right on your fingertips, ultimately helping you to manage your inventory efficiently, number one, helping you in your planning activities, improving the accuracy of the planning, and running your operations in a much more cost-effective manner compared to how we are all today doing, which is whenever there's a delay, we all take actions after the fact. Now, in terms of the implementation itself, it's actually divided into 4 key steps. As I was talking in the previous slide, it starts off with customization. So for each customer, it's a completely new algorithm that has to be put together. So we would look at what are some of the specific use cases for that customer, what are the different the way that the business operates. So that information is taken, and we would customize the system to make sure it exactly runs the way that your business operates to start with. Number two, it's about connecting the information, which is now you have that PO information. So as you raise new POs, all the historical POs that we have, everything is ingested. So that seamless automated flow of information happens between the two systems. And now the model in itself starts to generate the prediction, which is where you get to the third step. The third one is prediction happening, which is based on all the different inputs that we talked about, which is the PO information, the current historical, the events that's going on around the world, the supply chain mapping visibility, the end-to-end visibility of your supply chain, the 10 years worth of disruption history, all that taken in together, you would start to see the prediction information across the product. So when you get into the product, right from the home page, you would be notified about, hey, there are these many POs out there which could be affected, so you might want to take an action on it. The event page, we just looked at the war room, where throughout the pages you would be able to see all these purchase orders where the delays could happen, and then you could significantly make an impact by taking actions right away. And finally, what we would move towards is, as I was mentioning, it's a continuous process. The feedback comes into the system, and all this learning as we go through would be fed back, and any issues that we see as we go would be corrected through the model itself, and as a result, much more higher accuracy. And towards that end, there's also additional data then you could feed in. For example, if there are additional supplier metrics that you want to bring in, which you already have in-house, that could be fed in as well. So the scope of the intelligence increases significantly. So at the end of the day, what this gives you is, using advanced technology, helping to solve a real problem that's out there. So supply chain teams do face this issue where there's delay happening. They don't know what the root cause is. But if there's a way for us to provide that intelligence and predict and let you know, hey, these are the POs that are potentially getting affected by these many weeks or days, then you could actually take proactive action, work with your suppliers, and be that first mover, or take actions to close those gaps. So we are super excited about this new product and how we are using the technology to solve the problem. So with that said, let me hand it over to Melissa right now.
Yep, thank you so much, Sandeep. That was excellent. Thanks to Sumit and Sandeep, of course. And thank you for sending in questions. We had a lot of good ones come in along the way. If you have one, again, use that question tab to send it in. All right, so first question, is the solution smart enough to sense heightened demand for suppliers' products from competing customers and predict a shortage? For example, a chip shortage for automakers was caused because of suppliers diverting supply to a phone and tablet makers. I'm going to assume it if you want to take that one.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually an interesting question. There is a different product that we are working on called Commodity Watch, which addresses this exact problem. Can you look at happenings worldwide? This chip shortage example is a great one there, and come up with an advanced prediction on the pricing or availability going up or down. Obviously, the end goal here being that the customer is then able to take action well ahead of time, and maybe put additional contracts, maybe other sources in place to mitigate whether it's an availability issue or a price issue.
Super, thank you. And then the next question, does the solution also look at potential disruptions for good in transit? For example, if a shipment coming from Japan to the West Coast gets stuck in an LA port due to worker strikes, would it pick that up?
So what the solution would do is absolutely report on the strike, and then the fact that the port in Los Angeles has shut down. For getting to a container level update that this container has this purchase order, and hence that purchase order is also delayed. We do have partners that we work with who provide that kind of additional solution.
Great. And then there were a couple of questions surrounding exactly how the mitigation playbooks are generated? So that was one question. And then there was another one surrounding, are these part of the solution, or does each client have their own playbooks for different disruptive events? So I guess if you could answer how they're generated and then go to the second question, that would be great.
Yeah, I can take that one. So the answer is yes and yes to both. So the way that the playbooks are structured is each company, so what we have done so far is we have been working with different customers from different verticals and understanding how their processes are laid out to start with. So we have some stock playbooks that we have created with experts together, which would align what are some of the actions that the teams would take based on various scenarios. And it's actually right away available in the product as a stock playbook. Now, each company, as I was mentioning earlier on, would have custom playbooks as well that they want to onboard to the system itself. So that capability is there as well, where let's say it's a hurricane that you're looking at, and or in this case, you were talking about some disruptions at a specific facility. You could actually have let's say 5 different or 10 different actions that a team member would take. So you could actually configure all that. You could add a specific, let's say, a continuity document as well to it. And the next time you initiate a mitigation or a workflow, automatically you can bring in those automatically bring in those playbooks, along with assigning the tasks and assigning the projects to the different team members and track it effectively. So it's an integrated system within the existing product. So it is not something different that we have outside. So it's already inbuilt. You could leverage the existing playbooks as is, or if you want to configure something completely unique to your company, you can definitely do that as well.
Super, thank you. And I had a question that just came in regarding if these tools are bolt on at an additional cost or part of the existing capabilities that users can take advantage of.
Resilinc provides a number of different solutions, starting from EventWatch, which is our primary solution that provides the 24/7 supply chain disruption monitoring, to all the way up to the enterprise solution, which brings in many of these, especially this purchase order predictive capabilities. So depending on the need of the customer, they can pick one of our solutions to address their requirements.
Okay, super, thank you. And kind of piggybacking off of the different solutions, I had a question come in asking how we map tier 2 to the 9th tier suppliers and how reliable that data is.
Okay, so there are 2 primary ways that this happens. One is information that comes directly from your supplier. So we have in our solution have a way, have the capability to go to your suppliers and ask them for their suppliers. So you can collect information from the suppliers that way, and then you can continue going down. So the supply chain. So this information coming directly from the supplier base tends to be very accurate. The other way is we have implemented tools that automatically go research what the multi-tier supply chain looks like for any given company. So with that research data also becoming available, there is this mapping that gets created. But that is, of course, research data. And so there are 2 different ways to collect it, right? Directly from the suppliers, then the sub-tier suppliers, and so on, and through the research that we do.
Super, thank you. And maybe piggybacking on that question, I had somebody write, some suppliers might not be comfortable with sharing all this kind of information. What is the best way to communicate with them and ensure complete security about not sharing this data with everyone else?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are a few different things that are important to do here. First is, of course, the technology side, making sure that the supplier understands that the technology itself is secure enough. So the supplier has total control over who it shares its data with. And the supplier has complete confidence that its data is only visible to itself and to the companies that it has shared data with, and no one else. So for that kind of a conversation, we are happy to participate and provide the appropriate material and delivery forums for. Then the other thing is to have a frank conversation with the suppliers, and this probably is one of the most important things to do. Why is it that you care about getting this information from the suppliers? You make them understand that it is in your interest and in their interest that supply chains are robust, that there are no disruptions, that the manufacturing operations continue as normal. Most suppliers that we have talked to over the past 10+ years that we have been in operation get it. They understand the significance of resilient supply chains once you explain it to them, and that really brings the barriers down.
Super,
Okay,
thank you.
Sorry, I should add one more thing. There is always a carrot and a stick, right? It is very important to also recognize suppliers who are actually contributing to making your supply chains resilient. And so awards, recognition, certainly changing how much business you send to them, all of those really, really help and solidify suppliers' interest in help in providing this information.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, Melissa, just
next,
to that, just wanted to add
sure.
one more point here, which is just from the operational standpoint, as Sumit was mentioning, right? So we've been doing this multi-tier mapping for now 10 years, and we have the largest repository of suppliers providing this information. So time and again, we have worked with, there's a high likelihood that the suppliers that you care about the most is already in the system, and they have gone through this process of, why should I provide this information? Is it secure? So there's a learning that has already been imparted to most of the suppliers, and that confidence building is a part of an operational a process that we follow. So as I was saying, there's a high likelihood of suppliers already knowing the importance of partnering with their customers for the greater good of visibility. So making it much more easier as a result for the customer and the supplier.
Super, thank you, Sandeep. Next question. How does the integration take place between the supplier's ERP system where all of their data sits and Resilinc system? What are the ERPs the Resilinc model is compatible with?
So typically what we find is that suppliers will input data one of two ways. One is they already have existing reports that have information that we collect from them. And so they export those reports and then upload the data into our system. The other way is where if the supplier asks for it, we can do an integration directly with their ERP system. What you will find is that is a smaller percentage of suppliers who ask for that. It's just more convenient to not do an IT project and just use data that's available to them already and load it in the system.
Super, thank you. The next question that came in was, moving to a new supplier takes time and cost. How would predictive analytics help here to switch between suppliers immediately?
So as the question mentioned, right? It takes time and cost to move suppliers, to change suppliers, to onboard new suppliers. So really the way to look at this is you do not want to wait for an incident to occur, for a supply chain disruption to occur before you go looking for a new supplier, because then it's too late. What you want to do is look at the proactive workflow ahead of time, well ahead of time during your normal course of operations. Understand what the risks are related to each supplier that you have. Understand how they could impact your business, your customers, your order fulfillment metrics. And then ahead of time, start qualifying new suppliers. That really is the only way to do it. Last minute stuff, yeah, you may, for some generic components, you may be able to quickly switch to a supplier. And we do offer services where we can help you find alternate suppliers, but the strong recommendation would be to not wait and to be proactive with risk management.
Super, thank you. Next question. Market intelligence most often requires media and intelligence gathering agencies. Does Resilinc service subscribe to these various agencies, or do they have their own MI, market intelligence tools and processes?
So what we do is we collect information, we collect news, analyst reports, and so on from millions of different sources worldwide. And the way we do that is by either connecting directly to the source of the information. For example, there are government sources that will publish medical recall information, like the FDA does that. So we would subscribe directly to those sources, and then we also subscribe to a set of paid and free sources that aggregate information, that aggregate news and reports. Some specialize in financial information and other business information. Some specialize in more general news collection and so on. So yes, we do work with several different news aggregators and several different direct sources in order to collect news.
Super, thank you. The next question was, who gets to upload the PO part numbers and lead time? Is this something that the supplier has to do? Because if yes, that might be extra work for them.
Yeah, I can take that. No, so in this case, we would actually go into your system itself. So you would already have this information available today in your database, ERP system. So we would actually go in, pull it off from the system itself. So reducing those redundancies and manual touches. So automatically the data flows in, the extraction of information happens from the system, and the prediction is based off that extraction that we would do. So suppliers in this case, they don't have to provide any specific POs and details around what the number is and so on and so forth. It would be directly from the customer's ERP system. Now the supplier can collaborate and confirm impacts, etc., through the war room itself. So if there is an impact to them and their site that they're using for production, they could of course collaborate with the customer teams here. They could inform you about the impact, and any downtime, if at all, they could share that information. Then it's more of collaborated effort at that time.
So the idea here is the following. We start with historical purchase orders from you. And the AI now understands how, and we combine your historical purchase order data with our historical 10+ years of event data. Now the AI starts learning how your various different suppliers have responded to various events in the past, and how because of those events purchase order delays have happened. So once the AI is trained, then as we feed in new purchase orders, which come from you, not from your supplier. So you put in the new purchase orders into the system. And when I say you, I'm talking about an integration we would do with your ERP system. So it's all automatically flowing in. As these new purchase orders come in, the AI is then making a prediction saying that supplier's purchase order number 1234 is likely to be delayed 3 to 6 weeks because of that flooding in Thailand. Okay, so there is no on the purchase order side, there is no input from the supplier that is needed. Now, lead time is a different part of our solution, and this is where we have built out a solution where the supplier is able to access our system and update the lead time information directly into our system.
Great, thank you. And could you talk a little bit about what the time and learning curve is to adopt and start using the Resilinc system?
The way to look at it is the following, right? The minimum possible information we need are your supplier names. As soon as you provide that, we can start providing you coverage on disruptions that are impacting your suppliers. And here's the nicest thing. We have this really simple, easy to use mobile app So day one, as soon as those supplier names get in, we can share our research data. So you already have a lot of information at your fingertips, and the mobile app is immediately starting to notify you. Now, again, the mobile app is really simple with minimal to no learning curve. Anecdotally, at various different customer presentations, I've just passed my phone around, and not one person has asked me, hey, what do I do here? If you look at the mobile app, it looks very much like any news app that you're used to. So you see all the supply chain disrupting events that are specific to you. You tap on the news, you read the information, you look at the detailed analytics that are available, and that's it. Really, really simple to work with. So the learning curve is short, and to get started, the minimal information required, your supplier names, your key supplier names, maybe that's also pretty straightforward to get to.
Okay, super. I think we have time here for about 2 more questions. So this one came in: drop shipments are getting more prevalent for B2C marketplace setup. Does the solution offer some specific for drop ship suppliers?
This is not something that the solution does today. Certainly, it's something that we are looking at, in the future. If there are very specific needs that you may have, whether it's around dropship or something else, please do come talk to us, and we can see what the best way is to get you a solution.
Okay, super, thank you. And last question, beyond predictive capabilities, what do you see coming down the pipeline when it comes to product offerings for supply chain risk management?
So predictive and prescriptive solutions are the start. Where we envision the supply chain resiliency solutions go is towards a cognitive solution. So let's quickly talk about what cognitive means. Essentially, it means getting to a point where software is able to actually model human behavior. The software should be able to learn and say, okay, in that kind of a situation, for example, when a supplier has a purchase order delayed for 7 to 12 weeks, historically, this is the kind of action that the company has been taking. Let's say the action has been move inventory from plant A to plant B. And the solution learns that, gets smart enough, so it is automatically able to take that kind of an action. So that's just one example of a cognitive solution. There are many different scenarios where the system should be able to learn from how humans have been taking actions in the past and then automatically execute. That's what we are looking at. If you look out into the future, that's where the technology and the solutions are heading.
Super, thank you so much. I think we're gonna wrap it up there. Thank you to Sumit and Sandeep for that excellent presentation. Thanks so much to our audience for attending today. We'll be sending out a recording soon, and we'll have a recap published on our blog probably within the next week or so, so be on the lookout for that. If we did not get to your question, I will make sure that we get that answered for you within the next day or so. So again, thank you so much. Take care, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next webinar.